Hello, everyone. I call this meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 83 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Public Accounts. Pursuant to Standing Order 1083, the committee is meeting today for its follow-up study on Report 3, Gender-Based Analysis Plus, of the 2022 reports 1 to 4 of the Auditor General of Canada.
All our witnesses from the Office of the Auditor General: Andrew Hayes, Deputy Auditor General; Carrie Agnew, Principal; Department for Women and Gender Equality, France McRae. Bonjour, hello. The Deputy Minister, sous-ministre, Leila Boussaïd, Director General, Research, Data and Intersectionality. From the Privy Council Office, we have Kaylee Levesque, Deputy Secretary to the Cabinet Operations; Jennifer Miller, bonjour, Jennifer Miller, Assistant Secretary to the Cabinet Social Development Policy; and then the fourth group, Treasury Board Secretariat, Graham Flack, good day, Secretary of the Treasury Board of Canada; and Annie Boudreau, Assistant Secretary, Expenditure Management Sector. I understand that, bonjour, hello, good day, everyone. I overheard someone saying they hadn't been in a committee room in a little while, so it's great to have you all here. I appreciate you all coming in here today. It is certainly our preferences that when witnesses are in the National Capital Region, they come in, so I thank you all today. Each group here will have a 5-minute opening, up to a 5-minute opening presentation. I'll begin with Mr. Hayes. Good to see you again, sir. You have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Monsieur le Président, merci de nous donner l'occasion de discuter.
Mr. Chair, thank you for this opportunity to discuss our follow-up report on Gender-Based Analysis Plus, which was tabled in Parliament on May 31st, 2022. I would like to acknowledge that this hearing is taking place on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. Joining me today is Carrie Agnew, who was responsible for this audit. As you are aware, Gender-Based Analysis Plus, or GBA Plus, is the main tool used by the government to consider how gender, as well as other identity factors, can impact how Canadians experience the delivery of programs and services. Many demographic factors beyond our gender can impact how we experience life and how we access government programs and services. For example, a person may be part of a visible minority, be Indigenous, be old or young, have a disability, live in a rural setting, or be a newcomer to Canada. Using GBA Plus, the government should be taking our identity factors into account when developing, implementing, or adjusting programs and services. We found that long-standing challenges that we previously identified continue to hinder the full implementation of GBA Plus across the government. For this audit, we again included the Privy Council Office, the Treasury Board of Canada Secretariat, and Women and Gender Equality Canada. Although the lead organizations have addressed some of the recommendations from our 2015 audit, many others date back to our first audit of gender-based analysis in 2009.
Despite our previous work and recommendations, it is still unclear whether actions are achieving better gender equality, diversity, and inclusion outcomes. We found that the actions taken to identify and address the challenges of undertaking GBA Plus did not go far enough. The Privy Council Office and the Treasury Board of Canada Secretariat fell short in using their knowledge and the results of their challenge function to advance GBA Plus implementation across government. We also found that there was no approach to sharing information between the central agencies and Women and Gender Equality Canada to track progress of GBA Plus implementation throughout government over time. Women and Gender Equality Canada took action by developing tools and delivering training to build capacity across government to perform GBA Plus. Despite this, departments and agencies still face challenges that limited the meaningful application of GBA+, such as resources and training on developing GBA+ analyses, but more importantly, the availability of disaggregated data. Without disaggregated data, it is impossible to understand how diverse groups experience inequality. All three of the organizations we audited identified this issue as a significant challenge. The Privy Council Office, the Treasury Board of Canada Secretariat, and Women and Gender Equality Canada need to better collaborate and ensure that all departments and agencies fully integrate GBA+ in a way that produces real results for all Canadians. Mr. Chair, this concludes my opening remarks. We would be pleased to answer any questions the committee may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hayes. I'm sure we'll have questions for you in a few minutes. Turning now to the Department for Women and Gender Equality, the Deputy Minister, Ms. McRae, you have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge that I am here on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. It's where I live and where I work. Mr. Chair, thank you and members of the committee for your invitation to discuss our work that we have underway in response to the Auditor General's 2022 report on the implementation of Gender-Based Analysis Plus. Je suis accompagnée aujourd'hui de ma collègue de Famille Égalité.
Joining me today from Women and Gender Equality Canada is my colleague Leila Boussaid, who is the Director General of Research, Data and Intersectionality.
Je voudrais remercier
I would like to thank the Auditor General and her office for their work on GBA+. Canada is one of the few countries in the world that has benefited from regular audits on its approach to gender equality mainstreaming.
Department in 2018, Wage's role in GBA Plus is twofold. We act as a convener, a knowledge broker, and a capacity builder as it relates to women's equality and equality for gender diverse people. And we also have on the application on GBA Plus, its evolution to intersectional approaches that take into account the different experiences and interactions that diverse groups of men, women, and gender diverse people have with systems, structures, and institutions. As our colleagues from the Auditor General have noted, interest and capacity for GBA Plus has grown steadily with time. Canada itself is becoming more and more diverse, as we know, which means we must continue to evolve our approaches to make sure we remain relevant to the people we serve. As an example, Statistics Canada estimates that approximately 25% of Canadians are racialized based on the 2021 census. In 18 years from now, it will be around 40%. That's about 2 in 5 Canadians. Approximately 1 in 5 people in Canada aged 15 years and over, that would be 24% of women and 20% of men, report having a disability based on the 2017 Canadian Survey on Disability. Compte tenu de notre responsabilité d'évoluer,
based on our responsibility to evolve to meet the needs of Canada and Canadians, and feedback received from the OAG audits, as well as the March 2022 Senate Standing Committee on Social Affairs, Science, and Technology report on the role of GBA Plus in the policy process, WAGE has been implementing recommendations to ensure the impacts of an enhanced GBA Plus analysis continues.
Action to promote a greater understanding of intersectionality by clarifying methodology, updating training, and developing a new suite of tools for federal public servants. In addition, we've leveraged GBA Plus Awareness Week, an annual event, to promote greater understanding of intersectionality. The 2023 iteration was selected to reinforce GBA Plus's intersectional design. As part of these events, 2 panels on intersectional approaches were held with deputy ministers leading. They drew over 2,000 participants. Nous continuons à offrir des possibilités de collaboration et d'apprentissage entre pairs.
We continue to support opportunities for collaboration and peer-to-peer learning, enabling GBA Plus practitioners to share best practices and become leaders within their communities of practice and continue to build competency across the federal government. This includes working with others inside and outside government on ensuring that we are building awareness of culturally relevant analysis, and this using tools that communities with lived experience have developed.
Nous avons mis en place des structures de gouvernance.
We've also built more robust governance structures, including key colleagues at the deputy minister level, whose organizational mandates include cross-government leadership in areas such as anti-racism, as well as disability, inclusion, and relations with Indigenous peoples. And all of this is to facilitate strategic coordination across departments and agencies.
Revising the cross-government GBA Plus implementation survey to address some methodological limitations, including some raised by the Office of the Auditor General, the Senate Committee, and other experts, because we do want to use it to improve our monitoring and public reporting on the application and impacts of GBA Plus. We are learning from other countries as well as they evolve our approaches, and many countries who are at earlier stages of thinking are learning from Canada. Nous avançons dans la bonne direction et nous nous engageons.
We are moving in the right direction, and we are committed to continuing this work because it is about better serving Canadians today and tomorrow. Thank you.
Et vous remercie. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
Office next, Ms. Levesque, you have the floor for up to 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to provide you with an update on the steps we've taken in response to the Auditor General's follow-up report on GBA Plus, and I'm joined by my colleague Jennifer Miller, who's the Assistant Secretary to the Cabinet of Social Development Policy. Donc, le Bureau du Conseil privé appuie le ministère.
So the Privy Council Office, or the PCO, plays a supporting role to the Department of Women and Gender Equality, or WAGE, which leads on the strategic direction of GBA+. PCO's main roles are to provide public service support to the Prime Minister, to ministers within the Prime Minister's portfolio, and to the Cabinet to facilitate the smooth and effective operation of the Government of Canada. In the context of supporting Cabinet, we provide advice to departments and agencies on policy proposals that their ministers are recommending to Cabinet. In exercising our main roles, we are also working to enhance the application of GBA Plus to help produce better outcomes for Canadians.
The application of GBA Plus has been undertaken in line with the recommendations from the 2022 report on the matter by the Office of the Auditor General. Our enhancement efforts are summarized in the joint WAGE, PCO, and Treasury Board Secretariat of Canada Management Response Action Plan, or MRAP, as we like to call it for fun. For example, to enact the report's recommendations, PCO has developed better tools and systems to document the challenge function. The challenge function refers to the role PCO plays in advising and refining products for Cabinet, including Memorandum to Cabinet, or MCs. As described in the MRAP, PCO developed a new process for supporting the application of GBA Plus in those MCs. The new process encourages the early integration of GBA Plus into policy development, helping to counter long-standing concerns that GBA Plus is applied too late in the policy process to be impactful. Le BCP a également élaboré de nouveaux outils pour orienter l'intégration.
PCO also developed new tools to guide the integration of GBA Plus considerations and disaggregated data into MCs. These tools have been finalized in line with timelines and will be updated regularly to ensure continuous improvement. Further, to advance the quality and use of disaggregated data in GBA+, PCO continues to co-chair with Statistics Canada, a government-wide ADM-level advisory committee on disaggregated data, This committee's role is to strengthen and support usage of disaggregated data across the whole of government. In addition, we are leveraging the central position of PCO to encourage the adoption of GBA Plus frameworks by all federal departments.
We will be publishing our own GBA Plus framework later this month. One of the key observations made by the Office of the Auditor General concerned the lack of formal coordination between WAGE, TBS, and PCO. And I'm very pleased to report that significant progress has been made towards greater formalization of our existing collaboration and coordination roles amongst the three organizations on GBA Plus. We've also developed a regularized approach to sharing information concerning the implementation of GBA Plus in MCs with WAGE, and we participate regularly in WAGE-led governance bodies in support of that GBA Plus implementation and enhancement. In partnership with TBS WAGE, we will continue to strengthen our information sharing practices and systems. Mais malgré les progrès considérables accomplis, nous reconnaissons qu'il reste du chemin à faire. Nous sommes
Despite considerable progress, we recognize that further work remains. We are committed to ensuring the rigorous application of Gender-Based Analysis Plus in support of sound decision-making. So I will end there, but I'll be happy to answer any of your questions. Thank you.
Et voilà, puis suivant, c'est Monsieur...
And next, we have Mr. Flack.
Great, you have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, puis merci.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to Andrew and his team for their work. We are in agreement with their work, and we are implementing them along with other key measures that I will be covering. Since this fall, we have shared our observations with the Privy Council's office on the topic of progress that has been made in integrating GBA Plus into decision-making processes and what remains to be improved. Even though there was an exchange between departments and has been for a long time, this process has made it a lot more formal and more written. We have indicated that more and more presentations at the Treasury Board are founded upon disaggregated data. That being said, many times they have not been able to mitigate the impacts on GBA Plus. What we're doing here will become an annual process in order to overcome systemic obstacles in the implementation of GBA Plus.
Is key to planning and understanding the impact of GBA Plus, and this is why TBS continues to strengthen the tools and guidance to encourage the use of disaggregated data where feasible and appropriate. For example, this past July, we published a privacy information notice to support departments as they plan their data collection for program monitoring, evaluation, and reporting. This helps to address concerns another agent of Parliament, the Privacy Commissioner, raises around the appropriate protection of privacy and information. TBS will also continue to review and refine the guidance for departmental results reports to ensure meaningful information is made available to decision makers and the public. Now, in addition, Mr. Chair, TBS publishes best practices on GBA Plus program impacts based on a review of the supplementary information tables in the department results report. We did this in both 2021 and 2022. And next month, we intend to publish an update that's significantly more comprehensive in terms of best practices. As part of this update, we will also be providing a new analysis on government-wide program impacts on gender and diversity, and we'll be building on this in further updates. Cela permettra à la fois d'établir une...
This will both set a benchmark for other departments in terms of their reporting requirements on Canada's Gender Responsive Budgeting Act, and as well will hold the government accountable for the impacts of its programs. The entire public service must ensure that GBA Plus is an important consideration at all stages of the legislative, policy, and program process, and not simply an add-on. Significant progress has been made through the application of GBA Plus. However, capacity building for the necessary data collection and analytical work is still ongoing and will take time.
Questions?
Thank you all very much. I'll begin our first round with Ms. Vecchio. You have the floor for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, and thanks so much for having me here today and bringing forward this report. I think it's very important that we do look at it to see what has happened over the last 8 years. And I just want to reflect because I've been part of the Status of Women and I've had the chance to work with many of you. And I know that we are trying to do good work at the Status of Women Committee when we talk about GBA+. And I just want to look at this because in 2016, there was a mandatory requirements to include gender-based analysis plus in the memorandum to Cabinet and the Treasury Board submissions. That was in 2016. In 2018, Status of Women became a full department. In 2019, Cabinet ministers were mandated to consider gender-based analysis plus. There were things that we see if we're looking at this timeline. It seems like we're telling people to do things, but according to this point, we find that long-standing challenges that we previously identified continue to hinder the full implementation. And despite our previous work and recommendations, it's still unclear whether actions are achieving better gender equality, diversity, and inclusion outcomes. Carrie, I wanted to ask you specifically on this because you had the chance to go through all of this. Where did you find some of the greatest holes? Were there in departments? Where were the holes beginning to start?
Thank you for the question. So there was 3 areas, main themes that we found, and we reported on these. One we talked about and found was the capacity building, the training and the tools, and that despite the work taken, there were still gaps and more work needed to be done. We've heard a lot today about the availability of disaggregated data, its collection and its use, and we found that there was much more work to be done on that front.
Thank you so much. And perhaps I can come over to Frances because we talk about disaggregated data all the time. And a lot of the policies that we're doing, whether you're living in rural Alberta, and we just had a great conversation about this yesterday on carbon tax, the fact that policies do impact different people in different parts of the world or different parts of the country. So recognizing those regional differences are really, really important. Frances, can you just share with me, what are you finding some of the challenges when trying to enter these departments to say, we've got great tools, now start using them?
Thanks for the question, and I'll just go back to the 2 points that that Carrie raised. One on capacity. What we find is we are building actually quite strong capacity throughout the system. Our view, though, is that it can't be just a small group of experts. I think in the past, there was a view that if you have a few GBA experts in your organization, you can manage. I think with the pace of government and business, there's been a strong recognition that we really need to have everyone doing policy and program work understand this, particularly, as I mentioned, given the changing nature of Canada. Intersectionality, I think I would say on the capacity piece, it's numbers, but I think it's really competency, and it's that intersectional competency, which is what another thing that the Auditor General raised in her comments, that we were not focusing enough on intersectionality. And I would just say on disaggregated data, I would commend to you Statistics Canada's work on this, because since the time of the audit, they have done tremendous work. And they do have, they have a public annual report that they published last year on their on disaggregated data.
And I know that disaggregated data is really, really important, but I'm looking at here and I'm seeing that we just finished the Disability Act, Bill C-22, and I'm just wondering how there have been zero reviews. So the Gender Results Framework lacked disaggregated data to monitor progress in advancing gender equality. We've just passed a huge bill, yet there has been no framework for disability, and I just sit there and think, what a disconnect. These are things that are extremely important for those who are most vulnerable. Switching over, how much time do I have left, Chair? Sorry. 2 minutes. Switching over to the Privy Council, I think it's really important that when we're looking at legislation and policies, that there is a GBA put on this, specifically when I'm looking at women's safety, and those are vulnerable populations. Can you share with me what is being done to ensure that when you're looking at pieces of legislation, especially in the public safety realm, that the GBA and A lens is being applied?
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. Could not agree with you more. And that's exactly what our team does here at PCO, both in social development policy and legislative and house planning. So we have a GBA plus focal point here, but we also start early with the department. So if a mandate letter commitment comes forward or a bill is moving through, how do we immediately get involved from day one with our GBA plus focal point, working with WAGE, working with others to inform that from the get-go?
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I think this is where I want to come back to you, though, Ms. Levesque, because I think as we're looking at this, as a person who works on women and gender equality, we are seeing extraordinary violence in our communities, whether it's intimate partner violence or domestic violence, we're looking at that, whether it's random acts of violence that's happening to vulnerable populations. We're continuing to see this escalate. Can you share with me, has a GBA plus been done on important pieces of legislation like Bill 75, which was in the 42nd Parliament, or with some like our bail reform? Has a GBA lens actually been put on that?
I would have to confirm on specific pieces of legislation, but I can tell you for certain when it comes forward from when we do that analysis here, we absolutely, it will get sent back to the department otherwise without a GBA plus. It's a mandatory element.
So we're seeing, I'm sorry, but we're seeing pieces of legislation that are passing this that at the end of the day are making women unsafe, period. So how are those passing through when we know at the end of the day it actually is having a negative impact? How is the GBA plus failing the safety for women?
It's an excellent question, and I'm not trying to be evasive because it depends on the origin of the bills as well, where they come, where they're developed, how the process works itself through. But truly, when we see proposals from departments, if they are not adequate in that space, and Francis and I work together also on gender-based violence in addition to GBA plus, it is one of our proposals, the Mass Casualty Commission response, that work underway. That is absolutely the thrust that's being brought. That intersectionality is key to that because it's not just, as you say, the question of violence in and of itself, but it's co-location, rurality, access to resources, local policing, et cetera, that all feed into that part and parcel.
Thank you very much. Ms. Yip, you now have the floor for 6 minutes.
Thank you for coming. It's so nice to see so many witnesses for this important report. And I'll begin with Ms. McRae. For the benefits of Canadians watching this, can you explain what GBA Plus is and why it's important?
I'd be pleased to explain GBA Plus. Gender-based analysis plus is an important tool for us to be advancing equality in Canada. Some of you will be aware that we started originally with the term GBA, and the plus was added over the years, partly because what we're actually asking people to do on gender-based analysis is to be thinking about a whole range of issues, not only gender. And so the concept itself has evolved quite a bit over the years to encompass really an assessment of the various factors that we need to consider in order to design policies, program legislation, any initiatives that reflect the lived experiences and the real lives of Canadians. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Flack, who is responsible for monitoring and reporting of GBA Plus implementation in departments' operations?
So departments are ultimately responsible for that, but we do provide them guidance in how to do that and have updated the guidance over time in response to what we found in terms of weaknesses. But ultimately, it's departments who will do the reporting, though within a frame that we provide them.
Can you provide some examples about what kind of guidance that you just mentioned?
Sure. Well, we're fortunate to have here Annie, who actually manages the team that does this, so she can give you the real-world application of this.
Thank you very much. It's a very important question. So we do provide guidance to departments and agencies on a regular basis. So we issue guidance on what we call DP, departmental plans, and also departmental results reports. They have to provide that every year. But in between, we also meet with all people involved in that process to make sure that they do understand requirements that we have. Since 2017, we have included in those two documents specificities surrounding GBA+. So that has been since 6 years. It is very important so they do understand what is included. And again, we do meet with them all the time, and they have the chance to come back to us with questions and exchange. It's a large community, and we are all learning from each other. But those are the really two main guidance that we have out there, and it is accessible to all departments and agencies.
You have an action plan?
In respect of?
To some of the guidance that you're giving out in terms
So
of
the
and also
guidance, it's an evergreen document. Okay. It changes every year. Every time that we learn something new from PCO, something new from wage, we do integrate all of that in the guidance. It is a document that is evolving all the time. And like I was saying, since 2017, we do have specificities in terms of the GBA plus. We're going to be issuing as well, before the end of the calendar year, a report that will highlight best practices that we have seen in departmental results report, the supplementary information table we call the SIT, with all the good examples of GBA plus. And we're going to be showcasing those examples of GBA plus to make sure that everybody is aware of what people are doing out there, and we can have always exchange between ourselves.
That's great that you're able to give examples and a chart that will showcase, but how can we ensure that this continues on?
I really like that question because my group is in charge of reviewing challenging Treasury Board submissions. And we are reviewing roughly 15 Treasury Board submissions every week. So every week there is interaction with all departments and organizations to discuss what is missing in their plan. If it is data collection, if it is results, if it is outcome-based information. And we have the privilege at Treasury Board to be able to work with all of them, and again, to be able after to make sure that Treasury Board submissions that are submitted in terms of implementation plan and the policy on result, that we have something concrete to show to Canadians.
That's good to hear. So this is all part of your response to the Auditor General's recommendations. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct. Thank you.
Thank you. This is for Ms. McRae. Can you detail changes in the uptake of GPA Plus for federal public servants of gender-based analysis?
Yes, thank you for that question. Maybe just before I talk about some numbers around uptake, I'd like to talk about a couple of examples, very specific examples that you asked about around whether we are seeing intersectionality being incorporated. So I will just give you a couple of examples, and MP Vecchio mentioned, for example, rurality. So we know that what we're working on to incorporate rural voices in the federal government is a collaboration with the Center for Rural Economic Development. And what we're trying to do is ensure that our advisors who are living and working in communities are gathering local data, evidence, lived experience to bring back into the federal public service to ensure that rurality is being considered. If I think about the uptake, we've had tremendous uptake in our training. We have, I mentioned the GBA Awareness Week, where we had over 2,000 public servants on the line. We have well over, I think, 250,000 to 300,000 public servants and parliamentarians, ministers, staff who have been trained now on GBA Plus courses that we work with the Canada School of Public Service to deliver. We've done a range of new products for folks on intersectionality. We did some work with people around COVID to make sure that the programs that were being developed during COVID were also applying a GBA Plus lens. And so we are seeing tremendous interest all across the system in our work. We have no shortage of folks who are either referred to us from Treasury Board and Privy Council Office, or who come to us for advice and assistance in terms of building their knowledge base.
And thank you very much. Et maintenant, c'est Madame Sinclair Desgagnés. Vous avez parole.
Now, Ms. Sinclair Desgagnés, you have 6 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to all our witnesses for being here with us today. Thank you to the Auditor General's Office. You have held audits on this multiple times. I think this is the third, 2009, 2015, and then 2022. It's, of course, a very important topic, gender equality, and what the government can do to reduce these gaps that exist, whether we'd like them to exist or not, in our society. In your last report, Mr. Hayes, the audit stated that there are significant gaps in several departments, especially in terms of following up and improving things. If you could clarify this, but what I'm wondering is if we should be concentrating on the results. Some departments have not been focused enough on tangible results. And so, in your opinion, what has caused these problems?
Merci.
Thank you. I would say that one of the primary causes is the use of disaggregated data. In many cases, the information exists, however, it is not used in these reviews. It's extremely important to create action plans and policies and to implement them. So I'd say that that is one cause. And we found in our report and stated it that information is extremely important, as well as training. And have these problems already been raised in the 2015 audit? Yes, there were similar shortcomings that we still see today in this current report. What I would also add is that when we look at the Auditor General's audit that was tabled a month ago, there are examples in this report of the consequences of these shortcomings. Great, I'll come back to these consequences. However, in your opinion, over the course of 8 years, why have we not fixed this issue with disaggregated data? I'm not sure if I can give you a reason for this. Here's the situation, according to what we found. This information should be included in reviews so that decision makers have the best information possible when they are making their decisions. I don't know why. Maybe Ms. Agnew has an answer? Yes, so I would add that 7 years later, there are still departments and agencies that have still not implemented the GBA Plus framework and the 6 elements. Can you name these departments, please? Could you name the departments that have yet to implement the GBA Plus after many years? So there is a survey that was shared, and that was a survey from Wage. Okay, can you name the departments that have yet to implement GBA Plus? Because you did say that there are several departments that have not implemented this framework. I think that that's a question that the department could give information on. But what I would say that with everything that we've shared in our report, we can say that generally departments have an opportunity to improve their processes and the way in which they're using GBA Plus. Okay, but if we come back to the central problem of disaggregated data, we know that several departments rather have not implemented practical solutions. So which tangible solutions could departments have implemented? How long would that have taken, and why have they not done so? Could you quickly respond to this question? I think that it's a question of action plans. In this case, the department is in a supporting role in terms of these reviews. So Wage is there as support, and therefore, would you say that the department has not done enough to support the other departments? what I would say is that it's also a question of jurisdiction. And this is one of the reasons why we raise the topic of training. Could you share more about jurisdiction? What do you mean by that? As the Deputy Minister stated, there are experts, maybe only a few experts in each department, but it's necessary that others also be aware of how this works. And so could WAGE also train other departments to ensure that they have the necessary knowledge to implement GBA Plus? Maybe this is a question for the Deputy Minister. Okay, yes, thank you for the question. Of course, earlier we discussed the training that we offer. We work very closely with the public service school. We have departments that are very large, that are spread throughout the country. And so we have a very broad jurisdiction. We work on capacity building. I would ask my colleague to give some more tangible numbers. Sorry, we are running out of time, but I think it's very likely that we will get to these numbers in a few minutes. Mr. Desjardins, 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for being present here. I understand how difficult this work is. You know, it's not every day that I think we have the opportunity in this committee to talk about very broad, applicable policies that, in Canada's own perspective, I think is really important, considering our own history, considering the state that Canada is, and considering that we're still in the work of trying to create a democracy that includes everyone, to create systems that include everyone, to have policies that include everyone. An immensely difficult and challenging job, and it's one that I want to thank you for, given the fact that we're in the circumstances of auditing this work. Of course, we're talking a lot about the deficiencies of that work today, but there are, of course, leaps and bounds that have been made for Canadians for generations towards this better understanding, and you follow in the footsteps of that work. So thank you for that, and thanks for your service to making sure today's audit and today's findings are possible. It's a really important question, I think, when we ask ourselves GBA Plus. And I think many Canadians, when they are faced with this question, there's often sometimes a response that echoes, why is it important? And I think it's important because we have to find ways to demonstrate to Canadians that it's a matter of inclusivity. It's a matter of how one spends their taxpayer dollars, who's included in those expenditures, and who is ultimately included in the benefit that a program, particularly a national public service program, ought to entitle to people. It's an incredibly important question, I think, particularly to members of Parliament who are sitting around the room as well, and sitting across many parties, and including the House of Commons and legislators across the country, because it also means that if people don't feel included in the expenditures to policy, why would they want to vote? I do think this is a tangible issue directly related to apathy in our country, directly related to democracy in our country, and directly related to whether or not these folks will ever feel included. You know, I'll share a personal story for a quick moment. My mom, for example, was born in a time where Indigenous people could not vote. She was born not seeing anyone vote in her life. Her grandparents weren't allowed to vote. The General Enfranchisement Act in Canada was not yet passed. Indigenous people were the last people in our country who got the right to vote, and that was 1960. It's unquestionable to think that a democracy would do something like that, to exclude such a voice, the founding voice of our country, for so many years. But that's the risk, that's the consequences of not ensuring GBA Plus analysis in our policies. It's a devastating outcome that still has impacts to apathy, it still has impacts to trust, and still has impacts to people's ability to see Canada as a good, welcoming, and diverse place for many people. And so I want to ground today's my questions in that real life experience, because it's something that we're still feeling, and something that community members across the country, right across the GBA Plus analysis, are still continuing to deal with. And it breaks, I think, those persons' heart, and my heart as well, to know that this audit has demonstrated in many ways the continued pattern of what I would perceive as perhaps neglect of some of these issues. And it could be because of capacity, it could be for various kinds of reasons. And that's what I'm here to find out, is why is it that, for example, the three organizations here that responded to the Office of the Auditor General's recommendations responded to the recommendations by, quote, continuing to, end quote, undertake the actions recommended. And so it implies that, in fact, that in the prior audit that you were continuing to do those actions at that time, but they don't necessarily seem to have improved in this audit. And so I suppose my question is direct in the fact that I'd like to know whether or not, in response from all three departments would be helpful, do you not fully agree with the Office of the Auditor General's findings?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. We do agree with the Auditor General's findings. In fact, I would just, talk a little bit about the evolution of GBA Plus. GBA Plus is not something that is static. We need to continue to evolve our approaches to GBA Plus. And I think what you would have seen, and certainly, we could certainly table with the committee, and I think in the report of the Auditor General, there is a timeline there that demonstrates concerted action over a 30-year period. I do want to comment on this, the question of Canada's kind of leadership here, though. I was looking back at the OECD report that that Canada asked to have prepared on our work in GBA, and if I could just, Mr. Chair, I would like to just refer to the news release that OECD issued at the end of that report that they completed in 2018. And I will just talk about the first line. Canada has made significant progress on gender equality in the last few years, developing institutions, policies, tools, and accountability structures that position it as a leader in an area increasingly seen as a cornerstone of inclusive growth, according to a new OECD review. So I guess I just want to say I really do believe we are continuing improvement. We are seeing it become better. You are seeing the Gender Budgeting Act, which has required quite a lot of rigor.
But I do appreciate your comments. I just want to be able to give time for the other witnesses as well to respond to the question of whether or not they agree with the OAG's findings. And I want to preface my question not with the fact that you're not doing good work. And to the previous speaker, I understand that. But today's
Mr. Desjardins, I'm going to
ensure that
I'm going to cut you off,
Mr.
Desjardins. I'm going to, so we can hear from the other witnesses briefly, because the time has expired. But I do want to hear the answer from Treasury as well as PCO. So go ahead, please.
So I'll just give maybe a specific example to show how we agree and how that's consistent with continuing to, and it's around disaggregated data. So at the time of the first report, there was some disaggregated data, but major investments had not been made in many areas, and they are needed to do additional linking of data, for example, to StatsCan databases on individual programs. So progress has been made on that. When we say continue to, as Francis indicated, Statistics Canada has made some major investments to upgrade the capability of departments to interact with their site, but we are not yet at a point where 100% of programs all have disaggregated data. And there's reasons why it's going to be challenging to get there. They include privacy concerns. Yeah.
I'm sure someone will come back to that. And PCO, please, if you'd like to just respond to Mr. Desjardins briefly. Thank you.
Thank you. In short, yes, agree, but also the work continues specifically on the application of rigor, the development. So when I say continue to, it is about continuing the rigorous evolution, and it is also about the reflection, as Francis said, the changing population of Canada. So I'll leave it there for now.
Thank you very much. Beginning our second round now, going to Ms. Vecchio. You have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
I would actually like to give my time to Kelly. Kelly?
Wonderful.
Oh, you said that.
I'm surprised. Yes, I did. Thanks. Thanks, everyone, today. Mr. Hayes, I want to start with you. I've got a bunch of questions, but I'll start with you. Do you feel the government's been successful in this process, considering we look at 2015 and the other reports? Here it is 8 years later.
I think that I would say that the government has made some steps since our 2016 report. So I could point to the fact that Gender-Based Analysis Plus is a requirement for MCs and TBS subs. But I would say...
Interrupt you, though. You say it's a requirement, but it doesn't seem to be a requirement that the government's following. And that's why I want to ask, do you believe it's successful? If we have a requirement, are these requirements being followed?
So I would say that the analyses are being done. The question about how strong the analyses are is an open question. Really, what is important is that ministers, decision makers, get the best information possible to weigh the intersectionality factors that should be at play in their decisions.
Do you think they are?
At this point, when we did this audit, we identified opportunities for improvement. In our audit that we delivered about a month ago on inclusivity in the public service, we identified that there's still room for improvement, and particularly with data.
The answer is no, then. The short answer. Ms. Boudreau, same kind of question. Is the results framework, do you believe it's being successfully followed? And who ultimately is responsible? I think, they're saying if everyone's responsible, no one's responsible. They sound like, okay, Treasury Board, like everything else, sets framework and then walks away, and it's not being followed. It's the departments. Who should be accountable for this? And the government, not everyone can be accountable. Someone has to be in charge to follow up this is happening.
Thank you for the question. You are completely right. We do have a challenge function at Treasury Board, and we do so in Treasury Board submissions, as an example. And to go back to your question, we do a lot of back and forth with departments and agencies when we're not comfortable with what we are receiving in terms of implementation.
So for 8 years then, the framework hasn't been properly implemented. What's the back and forth like from Treasury Board? Again, for 8 years, I could see a new program rolling out, takes a little while, but we're 8 years in now.
Yeah. The framework is evolving, and we have programs that are becoming more and more complicated. So we don't have a solution fits all. So we really need to work in collaboration with departments to make sure that we're doing the right analysis at the right level.
Okay. I want to follow up on a question Ms. Vecchio had. It was very, very important. It's kind of overlooked in the report, I believe, is how we look at legislation through a GBA plus lens in relation to vulnerable people. And I want to just bring up a real hurtful issue that happened in Edmonton. It was in April. A mother and her child were murdered by someone who had been let out on bail while he was released on bail after assaulting someone else, while released on bail for assaulting a child, while out on bail for stabbing someone at a bus stop. So would C-75 would that have gone through a GBA plus analysis?
I assume for me,
sure.
Yeah,
Ms. Levesque.
It would have absolutely gone through.
Would you provide the committee with that analysis, please?
That would be part of a memorandum to cabinet, and so those are considered under cabinet competence, sir.
So we're not even. How are parliamentarians expect to? And it's not your fault, obviously, but
no.
How are parliamentarians expected to judge the effectiveness? A mother and her child were brutally murdered. This guy just drove up, stabbed them to death, got in a car, drove away after being released half a dozen times on similar assaults. But we're kind of being told, cabinet competence.
No, absolutely, and not to conflate the heartbreaking tragedy
No, I know,
that you
but
mentioned,
this is
sir.
what I'm just examining. Here's an extreme example, but a real one from my community.
Yeah.
But we're not being able to provide oversight to whether GBA analysis was done.
So I think that's an important part of the committee process as well as legislation moves through the House, is that the gender-based considerations of legislation as they go forward. We do
I don't think that's committee's responsibility.
Mr. McCall, the time's up. I do, though. I'm going to exercise my chair's prerogative. I am concerned with this. I want to ask a quick question. Is there a GBA plus review of legislation, or is it done only at the cabinet level?
There's GBA plus analysis done on every MC that goes forward, so that would include government response to private members' bills as well.
So at the cabinet level. Thank you very much. Ms. Kelly, do you have the floor for 5 minutes, please?
Thanks very much, Chair. And just to follow up on a number of the points that Mr. Macaulay made, I know that C-75 had a reverse onus on intimate partner violence And that's, to me, I think that's a result of a gender-based analysis plus application on what how legislation is impacted. But I want to talk a little bit about data and how that impacts different departments and their GBA lens. So first and foremost, perhaps Mr. Hayes, I think you would probably be the best to answer this question. Is it the same analysis that is applied across all departments?
So I might allow or suggest that some of the other witnesses also add to this answer, but there is a form that is provided as a guidance tool, but it's for each department to analyze how their programs and policies, their actions are going to be engaging with the intersectional characteristics that are at play in a GBA plus analysis. So I wouldn't say that there is a one size fits all, but perhaps some of my colleagues might want to answer or add.
Happy to jump in, Andrew, and follow up. So I've run 3 big departments before Treasury Board. And so there's a huge diversity in the programs and actions you're taking before things. So Treasury Board, for example, would see a cement procurement. The data analysis in GBA Plus done around a procurement like that is going to be completely different in its intensity and nature than, for example, the launch of a major new social program. Data is critical to all of those, but the data I have found across the department is not, there's not a one size fits all to all of these things. In many cases, you don't have data to start with. You have to devote resources to collecting it. Important investments have been made on that front to be able to do that. But it's not that it was just one spend you can do it. You have to customize it to each program to figure out what the data is, where in some programs you may want to focus particularly on some aspects of the GBA Plus where we know that that's much more important for the program. But another huge barrier historically when you ask, can we collect the data, has been privacy. I remember the time when parliamentarians criticized ESDC for creating what was then called a Big Brother database to try to link data sets, even though it was anonymized, to attempt to get better disaggregated data. So we need to, and that's why we've issued the guidance on how people can act in the privacy space. But the last is there may be cases where the communities in the GBA Plus sector themselves would be quite uncomfortable with us collecting the data. I'll give a concrete example for you. Parks Canada has a reservation service to reserve a park site. From a disaggregated data perspective, it would probably be very useful for us to know the racialized status, the sexual orientation of each of the individuals who's applying to understand if the service is being experienced the same by everyone. But you can imagine some of those communities might object to the notion that in order to reserve a park site, they have to provide all that information. So those may be cases where it's actually not appropriate at the end of the day to collect the data, and that will create some data gaps. So I think part of the challenge in the progress is it's got to be done at a program-by-program level in a quite customized way to be consistent, and that's what's taken a lot of time. So that's why, as Andrew said, it's not a one-size-fits-all thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Again, I really appreciate you highlighting that, and I use, Public Health Agency of Canada as another example to say, you know what, like women's health is very different from a cisgender white male's health would potentially be. And so how do you overcome those challenges? Obviously, the better data you have, the better policy the government can make. So what are some of these challenges? I know you've highlighted a few of them, but what are some of those solutions as well?
I will start by saying data is one of the major components that we look at in almost every audit. Why? Because we hope that we will be able to provide some value added to the departments and agencies as they conceive of their programs. Because quite frankly, if you're thinking about the data that you will need to be able to report on and to serve Canadians, that will help you at the beginning to actually be able to customize the collection mechanisms and to drive the way that you're thinking about your policy development. I know Mr. Flack has a ton of experience doing exactly this.
Would you like to comment?
Yeah, and I'll maybe give an example from a previous audit, from the previous Auditor General. It was around an Indigenous skills training program where the programming was provided to Indigenous communities to provide that training. And the question was, what happened to the people 5 years later? And we didn't have data on that because the communities themselves were not able to necessarily track those individuals because they'd left the community. The solution there was a highly complex, anonymized use of tax data linked to individuals in a very delicate kind of transaction to maintain the privacy that allowed us at an aggregate level to try to track those individuals and their results over 5 years. But it was not a straightforward process, had to comply with the Income Tax Act. So that's an example of a specific program where you couldn't just ask the community to collect the data, because if the individuals had moved, they wouldn't be able to it. But I find it's at that transaction by transaction level we have to do it, which is why Annie's team is always pushing departments on how they can improve on each one. But I understand why it takes time.
And thank you. And that is the time. Turning now to Madame Secla Desgagnés. Vous avez la parole pour 2 minutes 30 secondes, s'il vous plaît.
You have 2 minutes, 30 seconds. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Very quickly, how is it that in the span of 8 years, we have not been able to establish a plan? And I say 8 years, I'm being generous, because it's been about 30 years since the government committed to using GBA+. So what explains this? What explains that several years later, we still have not been able to implement this amongst all departments?
Merci pour la...
Thank you for the question. Firstly, what I would say is that several things need to be done. There is no one-size-fits-all solution to overcome this challenge. The Auditor General mentioned in her previous report that the ability and the disaggregated data and the intersectionality is necessary. So plans have been created to make up for these gaps, but what I'd really like to underline is the fact that this is an evergreen problem. It's always changing. So when we come up with a solution, it will not apply for years and years. It will always need to be modified. And over the years, plans have been implemented that have made up for shortcomings to a certain extent, although as we carry on, we continue to find more gaps because of the changing reality. Now, I am an economist, and I'm specialized in social and environmental issues. Now, for example, the European Commission developed a plan for how to analyze the cost-benefit ratio of all their policies. So for the European Union, even more complex than Canada. And what they managed to do is integrate into this cost-benefit analysis an explanation. They took into account all the different projects in the country when they ask for money from the European Union. So why is it that the EU is able to implement this in the span of 5 years, whereas here in Canada, we have fallen far behind? And despite the fact that it should be more simple here. Thank you. Very quick response. What I would say is that we do learn a lot from the European Union. The standards there are very high. Just as it has been said by the OECD, Canada is progressing in this field, and we are one of the leaders worldwide. Thank you.
Floor again for 2.5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you again to the witnesses. I think this will be my final round. Is that correct, John?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thanks so much. So I'll ask my last question in relation to what I previously spoke about, which was the Office of the Auditor General's recommendations to each of you. In those recommendations, in many cases, you replied to those recommendations with "continue to." And I'm trying to get to the intersection, I guess you can say, between understanding our function, which is accountability, and understanding where those deficiencies lie, with ensuring that those things are properly addressed. And I don't know if I can't tell for certain if replying to the recommendations under continuing so or continuing to is in fact doing that. And so I'd like to know specifically if you were already doing those actions, the actions that the Auditor General had outlined that you said you would continue to do, that you're already doing. Why did the Office of the Auditor General find the deficiencies were that were outlined in the audit. Maybe we'll spend 20 seconds each just in your response to that, if we can fit that in.
Well, I can start with that if you'd like. So from the perspective of Women and Gender Equality at Canada, Mr. Chair, we are on track with our actions with respect to the audit. We don't dispute that we have more work to do, and we certainly have undertaken new initiatives as a result of the audit that are outlined in our action plan.
I'll go back to the disaggregated data example as one. There has been progress. There has been progress since the Auditor General's report, and we recognize that they're right, that there needs to be more. And we've taken concrete steps, for example, with the privacy notice to help move this forward, but it's going to take considerable time to get all programs through that process. So continue to is there's been action in this area, but we accept the Auditor General's view that there's a journey that needs to continue to get to where we want to get.
And I mentioned continuing the deepening of rigor, and that's something I wanted to come back to. It's really about the maturity of the process in and of itself, and that deepening of rigor. So specifically, further documenting and how we do deep dives with women and gender equality on individual feedback that is provided around specific policy proposals and the types of analyses that underpin that, and also building up the disaggregated data capacity of the programs and policies that are under consideration, especially if it's a brand new one versus an existing one that has a significant database on which to draw. Finally, I just think it's that continuous improvement that we bring forward.
And thank you very much. To Ms. Vecchio, you have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much. And I really want to go back to the GBA Plus and how it is being applied to legislation, because to me, that is when we're seeing the outcomes, I'm really concerned about the failures that we may be leading into. Back to you, Ms. Levesque. You had talked about these are cabinet memorandums. So anything that has a GBA plus, all of this is done, and it's confidentially owned by cabinet at this time. So as legislators, we are trying to make the best the best decisions, but there's a small group that seems to have all of the knowledge. And as legislators, would that not be beneficial to us to know the ins and outs and the quirks that may be occurring in legislation rather than just keeping it to a small group?
With regards to the specifics around GBA Plus, the sponsoring minister, so we do our challenge function, goes back to the sponsoring minister in each individual department as the legislation advances. And the minister then brings that proposal forward to all of cabinet to consider, so that once it goes through, that is ultimately the purview of cabinet.
And I fully respect that, but I also think as legislators, how can we make laws when we don't have all of the information? How can we debate things if the knowledge is not provided to us, but it's kept up in cabinet? I note here under the Privy Council and the Treasury Board of Canada, and I've started looking at some of this, under Section 5 of the Canadian Gender Budgeting Act, there's supposed to be a report done annually. Now, in this report, I see some of it, but it seems rather high level. Do you get into the quirks of this on things that are not working when you're doing an analysis, or is it just providing information and not the solutions? Can you provide me some information on that?
Thank you very much for the question. And you are correct. We have published already 2 reports, and the third one will be published before the end of this calendar year. And that report will be way more comprehensive because we have seen progress lately by departments in terms of data collection, in terms of capacity. And we want to report on what we have seen, best practices, and also we know there's still things to improve, and we want to make sure that the document that we're going to find on the website will include those 2 components.
So I really appreciate this, and as I've gone through here, I've seen some examples. But are there departments that we do not have examples for because we have not done a GBA plus on this when it comes to either the Treasury Board or with making some legislation?
So GBA Plus is mandatory on all Treasury Board submission, depending of the program.
So mandatory, is it a checkbox or is it actually very fulfilling? So that's one of the biggest things is I have lots of checklists at home and yeah. I know when to buy my flour and milk. Is GBA Plus just a check mark, or how in-depth is it on the analysis?
It is a big annex that departments need to look at with the perspective of outcome-based results. It's part also of the policy on result. If it is a new program, obviously the analysis will be very, very, very strong and detailed. If it is a renewal of a program, the analysis will be less so detailed. But it is not a checkbox. It needs to be done. And what I would like to say as well is sometimes if we are not comfortable with what has been brought forward, we are putting conditions on departments to come back to Treasury Board in 6 months or a year with more robust information.
Awesome. I want to put back on my hat as Shadow Minister for Women and Gender Equality, specifically because of the violence that's going on right now. One of the biggest issues that we're having is regarding violence against women that continues to be heightened. What sort of things is this government doing when it comes to a GBA plus? Because I'm looking at the legislation that does not match the actions, whether it is the justice system and the bail reform that has been a bust when it comes to allowing perpetrators back on the streets, or just looking at the whole thing. Can you share with me what have they done when it comes to justice and bail reform to ensure that women are safe?
Again, within the context of GBA Plus, thank you for that question. It's truly directed to the memorandum to cabinet as they come forward, and within the legislative framework as it is tabled. If, to answer your question about the committee stage, amendments are proposed that go beyond the scope, it actually would then have to come back to cabinet for a follow-on conversation and analysis that would underpin that as well.
And I appreciate that, but I can tell you that some of the legislation that has been passed by this government failed. Bill C-75, just as Mr. McCauley shared with us, we are seeing perpetrators being released all of the time. Share with me how that is safe for a child or a person who is a victim of crime. These are the types of things. I'm just wondering if it's being taken seriously enough. I know, I'm looking at Frances, I know she takes her job very seriously and does a great job doing it. I'm concerned with the other departments, whether it's making sure that we're procuring things that women can wear when on the battlefield, whether it's making sure that the CERB program is equal to everybody that goes across the country. And as I said, the carbon tax was a good example.
Ms. Vecchio, I appreciate that. I'm going to consider that last question rhetorical. Turning now to Ms. Bradford, you have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With the Treasury Board Secretariat, the Canada Gender Budgeting Act makes it mandatory that certain data in relation to GBA plus implementation is made public. Can you explain the importance of making the information public?
Thank you for the question. It's all about sharing information. So we want to make sure that best practices are being shared so that departments having problem with capacity or having problem with data collection can learn from best practices that we are putting out there. And it's not only to put information out there, but it's also having meetings with people involved in that domain to make sure that they do understand and they do exchange. And we have that all the time to make sure that information is provided, that we understand the information that is being put out there, and that we can have an informed discussion amongst ourselves, because the goal is always to be able to produce more robust GBA plus analysis. And like I was saying a few minutes ago, we have published already 2 reports, and before the end of this calendar year, we're going to be in a position to publish the 3rd one, and the 3rd one will be more comprehensive with more examples because we have seen improvement in the system.
Okay, well, that's good to know. So, Ms. McCrae, why is GBA Plus best applied at the departmental level rather than through the methods of parliamentary review suggested by bills like S218?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. So in terms of the application of GBA Plus, I think Graham talked about a couple of examples where it was really important to have the experts within the policy area in government who are designing and developing the initiatives get into the questions of who they're designing for and the issues about access to various government programs, services, the legislation that may apply to them. And I think you would have heard, if you've seen the report of the Standing Senate Committee, they did hear from experts who asked the question, why wouldn't you just have a few people, do this across government? And, the experts and academics in the field are very clear that you really do need experts, where they are, understanding how to apply analysis to their initiatives in which they are the top advisors.
Thank you. Mr. Flack, in your opening remarks, you mentioned that the capacity building for data collection is ongoing and continues to be a challenge. I wasn't sure whether that was due to staffing issues. So can you address that and when it will be up to speed? Because we've heard how it's so critical to have disaggregated data available.
Yeah, so as I indicated in the previous answers, you really have to look at this on a program-by-program basis because the data is often unique to the individual program that you're looking at in terms of the results. So you can't just go out with some generalized data collection that is necessarily going to get the information you need for all the individual programs. So you need a strategy for each program. That will often involve investments for the program. But one of the critical limiters has been the ability to link it to broader Statistics Canada data so that you can understand its linkages to the broader population. And as Francis indicated, real step forward in some major investments Statistics Canada has made to allow that to happen. So there's been very steady progress on disaggregated data, but as the Auditor General's office indicated, we aren't at the end state on this. There's still much progress that needs to come. Again, as somebody who managed programs in departments, there have been some systemic barriers to this beyond the resource one I raised. Privacy is the first one you get, where your council will come to you and say the collection of that data would be a breach of people's privacy if we did that. That's why we've issued the guidance to help guide departments through that thicket. But I'd say the second one, as I indicated in a previous answer, is actually checking with the communities themselves on whether they're comfortable with the collection of the data. And in some cases, they won't be. So in some cases, the right answer is actually not to collect the data, even though that will limit our full understanding of the implications of the program, because individuals will feel that there would have been an undue government interference or not interference, but interest in specific characteristics they have that they don't want when they interact with the program. So those are some of the barriers. So I'd say it improves every year, but we are not, in my view, going to get to an end state where every single program will have fully robust disaggregated data. There are going to be some areas where, for that third reason that I mentioned, we may not be able to get the disaggregated data.
Thank you. That's your time. If you have a quick question, I'll allow it, but if you could just keep it brief, please.
Yes, the last one from Ms. McRae. Why is it important for GBA Plus to be used as a policy tool for the public service?
Well, thank you very much for the question, and I'm really glad we're going back to the purpose of GBA Plus. GBA Plus is a tool, as I said earlier, to improve our understanding and our ability to tailor programs and services to the needs of Canadians and the people we serve. With those, with the diversity of this country changing all the time, the needs changing all the time, we do have to continue to evolve our work. If we are not designing for Canadians of today and tomorrow, really, who are we designing for? So, we do need to understand not just the rudimentaries between, say, women and men. We need to understand what is going on with various groups of women who have other factors that affect how they experience the world and systems around them. And I do want to focus a bit on the systems because, intersectionality is often defined as a number of different identities that kind of come together. I think one of the things we need to be careful about is ensuring we are also looking at structures and institutions and systems that people interact with. Because, the example that Graham mentioned, for example, of 2S LGBTQI people perhaps not wanting data collection in certain areas, that's a good example. Why is that? they may have worries of other things that they've experienced from various systems that actually create their experience of working with government. So I think it's really important that we not just focus on identity, but also on the depth of the systems and institutions and structures that people interact with, and how that may be quite different from one subset of a group to another.
And thank you. I want to thank all the witnesses for coming in today. I appreciate it. We went a little over our time, but I want to make sure we had a thorough discussion. And I thank you all for coming in today. I'm going to now excuse the witnesses. And for others in the room, we're going to suspend in a moment. Then we'll be going in camera. So I'd ask you to, if you're here and you have no business before the committee in our next session, I'd ask you to excuse yourself as well. And I will suspend for 5 minutes.
you.